Welcome on back, Stack the Box listeners. My name is Mike Luciano of the Jet Press, and I am joined today by Jerry Trotta of the Landry Hat for our Week 4 NFL recap show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Maybe you're watching live on YouTube, maybe you're watching later. However it may be, thank you for coming in. Make sure you subscribe to Stacking the Box on YouTube. Make sure you download the podcast. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. I swear, not for egotistical reasons, it's to get us up those review charts. So, Jerry, the resident Cowboys expert of the two, has to be feeling pretty good, I'm guessing, about how Week 4 went.
Thank you again, Mike, for that intro. Yeah, the Cowboys' third blowout win, 3 blowout wins, made light work of the Patriots, had Mac Jones seeing ghosts. It's moved to 3-1 before Sunday Night Football against the 49ers.
Hard to really complain about that, but even though the Cowboys are normally at the center of the football universe, for a brief moment, it was Zach Wilson who early on, you would not think there was a football game going on. There was a lot of Taylor Swift cutaways, and the Sunday night crew seemed almost begrudged that they had to cover this game. They're like, all right, fine. I guess we'll talk about the Jets and Zach Wilson. And my one big takeaway, because there's probably some level of alarm in Kansas City, because that was a game that they should have by all rights just completely pushed Zach Wilson and the Jets around, and they did not. You know, not only did Zach Wilson not play horribly, but he played exceptionally well, I thought, for Zach Wilson. And Patrick Mahomes, of course, with 2 horrible interceptions, a third one that was actually dropped by C.J. Mosley, and then a fourth one that should have been an interception, and then for some reason the referees, after double clutching the flag throw, so you know they had some trepidation about that, said, all right, let's call holding on Sauce Gardner after the interception was caught. And then that wipes it out. Patrick Mahomes does what he does. Chiefs end up winning. Patrick Mahomes is great, fantastic. We all know this. I'm in the Chiefs shouldn't panic camp, mostly because for some reason that Jets defense, I think it's almost built uniquely to frustrate guys like Mahomes and Josh Allen because they can't use the big arm. They're very limited in terms of trying to go downfield and make the big plays. So it's a lot of check downs, take what the defense gives you. That's how you got to beat this Jets defense. It's very patient, it's been, but don't break. And sometimes Mahomes, I mean, you could see it too. He was getting angry and itching. He's like, I just want to freaking chuck it 60 yards. That's what they hope for. So, and again, Mahomes has seen defenses like that before, and he's beat him a bunch of times because he's Patrick Mahomes. But if you're a Chiefs fan, I wouldn't be too doom and gloom about it. Zach Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett came up with a game plan that I did not think they had in them physically. I just thought they were too limited mentally to even execute that. So not a great result, but a win is a win. It's a moral victory for the Jets. And Chiefs fans, I think you're still on your way to probably the top spot in the AFC. Just hold on a little bit.
Yeah, totally. A big moral victory for the Jets. I feel like you have to feel great about Zach Wilson. Feel good about Zach Wilson moving forward. He saved his career. But from a Chiefs perspective, they struggled with some of the bottom tier teams in the AFC last season too. They have a propensity to just kind of play down to their competition for whatever reason. And yeah, that was on full display last night. Mahomes got a little too antsy, like you said, how Josh Allen was in the opener. And the Jets capitalized. It's just unfortunate that Zach Wilson had that fumble late in the game, or he just dropped the snap flat out, and he was devastated on the sideline. I felt awful for him, but from a Chiefs perspective, yeah, you're sitting pretty right now. You have the top seed in the AFC, and a day with the Vikings up next. They should move to 4-1 after. For sure.
Can I complain about 2 things? Number one, all right, look, I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, as I've said before in the Jet Press podcast. It's not my genre, and I get why that she's as big as she is. I get that, but I mean, even if you're a Swift fan, like if you watch the game, you're like, I can't even watch the game. It's just Swift talk and Swift cutaways. I mean, that was getting a little over the top. And frickin' Rodney Harrison, after the game, what was that? That was so unprofessional. I was like, I had to do a double take. I'm like, what? Like, is he really doing this? I mean, look, we all don't think Zach Wilson's very good. I'm happy that he played well, especially because everybody, me included, was saying the guy stinks. I'm happy he's proven people wrong, but I mean, that was hard to watch. And Chris Jones was trying to play him off. He gave him like 3 opportunities to be like, hey, man, cool it off here. Maybe he's just bitter again. Patriots guy. I don't know if it's a Patriots-Jets thing. I don't know if it's because he was with the Chargers beforehand. I don't know if it's a Chargers losing to the Jets a couple times earlier. I don't know what happened. But come on, Rodney Harrison, you got to be better than that.
Exactly. You have to be better than that. You can't coax a player into trashing a player who is coming off the best performance of his career. Like, any Zach Wilson criticism is usually warranted. Last night, outside of the drop snap, it really wasn't. He was throwing darts all over the field. Granted, he missed a couple throws. The throw at the sideline to Garrett Wilson in the end zone was a little long, and I think he missed Conklin or Uzoma in the end zone on one pass. But Rodney Harrison, you have to be better than that. You're a national analyst. Chris Jones, you can't ask Chris Jones to go up and in on Zach Wilson. And that was just totally unprofessional.
And now let's do a more professional segment that we're going to call Stock Up and Stock Down, which we've done the last couple times. And we're trying to see who is really thriving in the NFL over the last couple of hours and who is just saying, my God, can week 5 come around so I can get out of the stock down category. Spoiler alert, one of them was in last week, and the stock is even further down. I didn't think it could go further down. It's in a molten crater in the middle of the earth right now, this person's stock, who we'll get to later. But I was one of the guys who was really skeptical of my first stock up guy because I'm like, all right, there's no way this can continue. And then I'm watching Brock Purdy, and I'm like, all right, not only there's one thing to play well, and there's one thing to win games in the Kyle Shanahan system. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo proved that you could do that. And even a guy like Nick Mullins was playing, and you're like, all right, Nick Mullins looks like an NFL quarterback at least. It's Shanahan. He does that. So I'm like, okay, he has a nice couple game run. Eventually he'll get figured out. Little guy, not an amazing rocket arm. I'm like, he'll fall off. And it just it's not coming. Do that in Brock Purdy starts. He has, I think, 18 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That's 16 touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
That's insane. And he completed 93% of his passes yesterday against
21 of 22, I believe, against the defense that had actually been playing pretty well in the Cardinals.
For sure, yeah.
Beat up on Jerry's Cowboys earlier in the week. And I know Brock is not – he doesn't look like what the draft Twitter guys want in a quarterback. He's probably never going to be that great of a physical talent. But I'm watching this game. I'm like, I can't say a bad word about Brock Purdy. Like, at some point – you just have to say, like, you know what? It just works. And it's just working right now. Brock Purdy, you are free from slander. I know that the first time he loses, he's going to get crushed. Because think about that. He's never really lost. The one game he started when they lost is when he got hurt in the playoffs. So he's never lost yet, Brock Purdy.
It's impressive. It's impressive to watch. And he runs Kyle Shanahan's offense to a T. He spreads the ball around. He's careful with the football. And again, like you said, he doesn't have the physical intangibles of a Anthony Richardson or other young promising quarterbacks, but he does all the right things. He's a good decision maker. He's careful with the football. And yeah, he trusts what the defense is giving him, and you have to give him full credit for that.
And we've seen what happens when some quarterbacks don't trust things. See Wilson, Zach, outside of the Kansas City game in New York. Jerry, you had your eyes on Houston and Pittsburgh for one of your stock up guys, and it was certainly not Kenny Pickett, who we hope Kenny Pickett's all right, but I mean, they're playing 1920s John Heisman Red Grange offense over there in Pittsburgh. You had your eyes set on Houston, I believe.
Yeah, CJ Stroud, what more can you say about him? If you look at his numbers, you can't write off a Pro Bowl nod for him as a rookie. I think he's 4th in the NFL in passing yards, 3rd in passer rating, and he led the culture. He led Houston in their first home win since week 16 of the 2021 season. It's they went a full season without a home win. So he's helping reset the culture. I remember pre-draft, his stock took a hit because he scored low on a cognition test, and
that's basically like a BuzzFeed quiz.
Exactly, and executives were preaching that you shouldn't draft him because of that. I don't know. We probably have to take a look in the mirror as a draft, a draft analysis for sure. But yeah, CJ Stroud. I mean, second in NFL history with for most pass attempts without an interception over his first 4 career games. I can't say enough of him.
I believe awesome. Dak has the record. He's probably going to break that. It's funny you brought up Stroud pre-draft because I remember, obviously he's not playing well, but I remember when Justin Fields came out and they said he used to play baseball, so he has a weird arm motion from that, so don't draft him. Like, people get way too silly with this crap, especially around quarterbacks. But when I'm watching Stroud on the All-22, like, he just looks so calm and so poised. And honestly, stuff that I didn't even see at Ohio State. Like, I saw this stat earlier. He had 18 total scrambles, I think, his last 2 years at Ohio State. He's already got 8 with the Texans. Maybe they just told him in the head, they're like, you know what? Just trust what we're saying. You're a rookie. If you throw a pick, you throw a pick. Guy's going to be there. Like, he's just playing loose and free, and the Texans are really punching way above their weight right now. And, I mean, in that division, everybody's 2-2 right now in the AFC South. I mean, I'm not saying that they could sneak in, but I'm also not saying they can't. It's not sneak in, double negative, whatever. but as to distract from the grammatical error, we will move on to somebody who is not punching above their weight, and I'm still surprised is employed at this point, and that is frickin' Matt Eberflus. And I know people want to go put this on Justin Fields, and normally it would be fair. You had a 28-7 lead at home against an 0-3 team that had given up 70 points the week before. Can't close the deal. And of course, he had a fumble 6, which really wasn't his fault. I mean, he had a free rusher right in his face as soon as he kind of turned around to set the play up. And then the pick was just him trying to do too much. I mean, there was really nothing there. It honestly looked like Komet ran the round route. But Matt Eberflus, I believe, is in the last calendar year. Do you remember when he beat New England on Monday night when Bailey Zappi came in? That is the only win he has in the last calendar year. That is it.
That's it.
And the concerning thing, it's one thing to see a defensive coach be a terrible coach and ruin a young quarterback. This is nothing new, even though Fields played the game of his life. I mean, 4 touchdown passes. Shout out Justin Fields, man. I don't think he's the problem anymore. This is a defensive head coach who got hired, honestly, after his Indy defenses were never even particularly good, which was the surprising thing. He's been 32nd in the league in pretty much everything, and I believe he has now given up at least 25 points in 14 consecutive games. Defensive head coach. They draft a lot on the defensive side of the ball, Tyreek Stevenson and Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon. They've invested, and they gave $100 million to off-ball linebackers this year, and in Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, both of whom look like they're ski mask Hall of Famers after stealing money from the Chicago Bears. I mean, I'm not a big fire and midseason guy, especially with Ryan Poles, who as a GM really hasn't had a ton of time on the job. But I mean, what more do you need to see? I mean, they're 3-18, and pretty much you can look at every area of this roster: quarterbacks, receivers, defensive capital, drafting, everything, and point out at least one incredible error that they made. On top of the fact that the defensive coordinator resigned for really sketchy reasons we still don't even know. It is just a complete tire fire over there.
It's bad, and the fact they couldn't hold on to that lead against the Denver Broncos, no less, who are themselves a laughingstock, is just the icing on the cake. And Eberflus, as a defensive head coach, you would expect his defenses to look somewhat confident, and they continue to do the opposite. Russell Wilson had an okay day. I mean, he led the comeback in the second half, and the Broncos were still without star running back Javonte Williams, and I think it was Jaleel McLaughlin who erupted in the second half. The Bears had no answer for him.
Shout out Youngstown State, man.
Shout out
Penguins.
Shout out Youngstown State. But yeah, I never advocate for a midseason firing or any coach to lose their job. And Poles doesn't really have much experience as the general manager, but I struggle to think about what the Bears' ceiling might be this season. They do hold the first and second picks right now, I believe, right? So that's
because they have Carolina's pick, we'll get to a little later in the show. So they could. That's even more of a reason. Like, there's no possible way Eberflus and Poles are coming back. Like at the end of the year, you know they're getting canned. So it's just maybe start it now, jumpstart the head coaching search. But I mean, the Bears, there's all kinds of train wreck franchises, the Jets, the Browns, before this year, the Lions. Like, the Bears don't get tagged as that. You go look at the Bears the last, like post Ditka, even kind of during Ditka. I mean, there's a lot of, man, the Bears are kind of a mess. The owner's a 100-year-old lady. God bless her, but she's 100 years old. There's a succession of team presidents going in and out. It is just top to bottom, not a well-oiled machine over there.
It's tough. They have the Trubisky Mahomes. They'll never live that down. And the Chase Claypool situation, I feel like it's just like a culmination of everything.
He has 191 yards. They gave up essentially a first-round pick because it was 32 overall for him.
And now they're shopping him for a sixth-round pick, I believe.
If they get that, Poll should be executive of the year. If they get a pick for Chase Claypool at this point.
Yep.
So one more stock down, guys. A guy that I know you have some experience covering before you went on to the Cowboys, actually. The old Washington, now they're the Commanders, and their head coach, Ron Rivera, because boy, oh boy, they had a chance to really pull off an upset against an Eagles team that doesn't look too hot right now. As not hot as you can look for 4-0. And they just completely snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Rivera got panned for this decision. How could he not? You have a chance to win or lose on your own terms as an 8-point road underdog when you have a chance to upset a rival, like 10 times out of 10, twice on Sunday, like you have to do that. And Rivera's excuse was that his defense was gassed. So like, is an extra 15 minutes like the best thing for that? Like,
that's what they need to play more. That'll help them.
Yeah, exert more energy. That will make them less gas for sure. But yeah, I don't know how you kick the field goal in that situation. Or kick the extra point in that situation. It's a terrible decision. And I hope that Washington season doesn't suffer because of it, because it might be a tight wild card race in like a tight NFC, and this loss could haunt them for sure.
They still got 2 more Cowboys games and an Eagles game in that very tough division. And I mean, the Rivera move was dumb enough as it is. And I think honestly, the Bieniemy hire might be saving his job a little bit because he's been a lot better than I thought he would. Sam Howell's been better than I thought he would outside of the nightmare game with the Bills. But I'm looking at the Eagles, and I said this before, they're 4-0, but I believe Jalen Hurts is like 27th in the league in QBR. They clearly are missing Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. Because the defense, like the pass rush looks good. That secondary, outside of the Tampa Bay game, has been getting pretty lit up. I mean, Darius Slay's good, but I mean, Patrick Surtain's good, and the Broncos are getting lit up. Just collectively, something just seems a little bit off with them. And again, with that great offensive line and DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts, like when they're running the ball like that, it's tough to slow them down. Like I remember the Vikings game, they just absolutely beat them into the dirt. So it's still possible they can do that, but I keep watching the Eagles, and I'm like, I watch them barely beat New England and barely beat Washington, and have to struggle to fight off a Minnesota comeback. And I'm like, they're missing something here. Like last year, they had this killer instinct. Yep. I just don't see it right now.
No, definitely not. And the passing game doesn't have to be prolific when you run the ball at like with their efficiency, but something is off. And AJ Brown like blowing up on the sideline a couple weeks ago. I don't think it's a surprise that he's had a couple big games in a row. I think Jalen Hurts is making it a point of emphasis to get him the ball. Devonta Smith has kind of had a couple down games here, but yeah, the Eagles. I mean, you can't split hairs over 4-0, but if the playoffs don't start today, but if they do, you wouldn't like their chances to get back to the Super Bowl.
I mean, I think San Francisco's clearly better. I think they've established that right now. But,
yeah.
Moving on to another rookie quarterback, because Jerry was very in on C.J. Stroud. I can't get enough of Cam Newton reincarnated, known as Anthony Richardson. I on the last show, I remember I was saying that he might be top 5 in terms of not arm talent in terms of make and throw, but just pure velocity, how hard and far you could throw a ball. He might be number 1. It's not even like what Allen does where he just chucks it 60 yards. Like, he's throwing these passes 30 yards, and they get there in half a second. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I know that he's a little inaccurate. I mean, again, rookie, inaccurate in college, complex offense he's got to learn. He's on the fly, 3rd career game. But he's also got 4 rushing touchdowns in 3 games. I think he's the first rookie to do that. Or maybe Cam did it. He's either number 1 or number 2. And then, even if you want to take away all the film Twitter stuff that I love and everything else, you know what? Down 23-0, let a comeback tied the game. He didn't win because he never got the ball in overtime, which, you know, you hate to see that. But you're looking at Anthony Richardson, that division, which has been mocked very often as kind of the joke division, for lack of a better word, a more sublime word. It's, the Jaguars have always been a mess. The Titans have had good teams, but they never get quarterback right. And the Texans are up and down, and Indy is usually good, but there's always weird Jim Irsay stuff going on. Like, that division could have Trevor Lawrence, C.J. Stroud, and Anthony Richardson in it for the next 10 years. And honestly, maybe Will Levis if he plays, and we see if Will Levis is any good. I mean, that's going to be a Thunderdome of a division, and Anthony Richardson's going to be a big part of it. I've been so impressed with Richardson.
Yeah, how could you not be? He had a highlight yesterday with Aaron Donald breathing down his neck. It was a jump pass. You have to like zoom in to see his feet off the ground. Little flick of the wrist, 40 yards downfield, hit his tight end right in stride. It was
like a sky hook. He threw it like over his helmet.
Yeah, it's insane. His athletic ability is off the charts, and you have to. And yeah, his competitive nature. Down 23-0. The Colts defense gave him no chance. Stafford and Puka Nacua absolutely carved up the Colts defense in the first and second quarters. But yeah, you have to love what you're seeing from Richardson. And Shane Steichen was a home run hire for the Colts. It looks like Jim Irsay and company finally, and Chris Ballard finally have something cooking in Indianapolis.
How could this guy decide to hire Jeff Saturday and then this guy like within 3 months of each other? Like, how did he think they were both equally good ideas? This man's thought process, it boggles my mind.
And they might get Jonathan Taylor back this week. We'll see what happens. So like the Colts are definitely trending up.
I mean, I sure hope so. Now, you had another stock up guy. I'm looking at that Baltimore game. I know Dorian Thompson-Robinson didn't have a chance. I think he's going to be a good player, but I mean, he found he was going to play an hour before the game. I mean, that's tough for a fifth-round rookie. But the Ravens dominated as they should, and Lamar Jackson was just on fire.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson. I know the Browns were kind of put behind the eight ball after Deshaun Watson got scratched, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, God bless him. I mean, the Ravens ate him up. You really hate to see it, but he'll bounce back. He's a promising young QB. But Lamar Jackson, I mean, and I guess it's a credit to Todd Monken too, as his first year as offensive coordinator. But I feel like we're seeing Lamar play the best football of his career. I know he's a former MVP, unanimous MVP, but I mean, he's doing great things right now. He's completing almost 75% of his passes, 4 rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns apiece, 1 interception. And I think the Ravens' red zone offense, I think they're converting touchdowns at an 80% clip.
Oh, that's insane. The average is like 50-something.
It's crazy. Yeah, and they were I think 30th last year with like around 40, like the mid 40% wise. And yeah, Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's throwing darts everywhere. He could have had another touchdown yesterday. He threw in the back of the end zone to Nelson Aguilar that Aguilar couldn't quite get his second foot in bounds. But yeah, I mean, he was facing the number 1 defense in the NFL. I mean, by most metrics in the Browns yesterday, and he didn't throw for a lot of yards, and he didn't attempt a lot of passes, but he was highly efficient, and the Ravens won by 3 touchdowns.
I'm looking at Lamar, and when you said it might be better than the MVP here, I mean, passing-wise, I think it is. I mean, it helps when you don't have Pat Ricard at 300 pounds split out running routes in the slot. That helps. But I think part of what happened with Lamar in 2019, it was just like this freak event, like this crazy, like a comet, like an alien. And people were like, what the hell is happening right here? And it took them a little bit to, like, they just had to go every week because no one knew how to stop him. And he ran for like 1,300 yards. I mean, and he threw 36 touchdowns. I mean, nobody kind of knew anything. Now they kind of caught up a little bit. And he said, if there are games, I know Lamar's running the ball well, but if you take all the runs out of it, sitting back, finding guys, and this is Todd Monken. Todd Monken was like, he had Jameis in Tampa. That was it. It was, we're going deep and we're throwing bombs. That's his style. And I like that they got somebody that wasn't Greg Roman for Lamar. I'm like, I don't know if Mr. 4 verticals every other play is what's best for him, but it might be. He's really got him playing some of the best ball of his career.
Yeah, definitely. And when we mentioned injuries, and the Ravens yesterday were without Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham, Ronnie Stanley, I think Morgan Moses left, their right tackle left in the middle of the game, and obviously J.K. Dobbins is out for the year. So like Lamar just battling through adversity and putting up MVP performances. Nothing new.
I had teased earlier in the show that there was somebody who was on my stock down last week because I didn't really think he could even get any lower. He got lower, and that is Josh McDaniels, who is now 12-31 in his last 45 games as a head coach. I said this on the show talking about Brian Flores too. I feel bad for Patriots fans, you can imagine it, because apparently their coordinators for years are all morons, and they still somehow won Super Bowls. Because everyone who was a coordinator for Belichick, Eric Mangini, Romeo Crennel, Matt Patricia, this has been discussed a million times, but McDaniels is an interesting case because we saw him not work in Denver. He started 6-0, and then he went like 5 of 19 and got fired. Like, we know he couldn't work. And the Raiders division guy, they saw him in the division, thought he could work this time. And the biggest thing, like we could talk about his play enough. I mean, Khalil Mack's 6 sacks, the fact there was no adjustment for a rookie quarterback and Aiden O'Connell, who I thought actually played okay. I mean, given the circumstances, road game, even though like half the stadium was Raiders fans, road game, division rival, Justin Herbert, good front four with Bosa and Mack. I'm like, all right, tough job. Thought he made some plays. Then this bozo comes out and he's asked about his start, and he says, playing quarterback in our league starts with taking care of the football. You D-bag. How is that your first thought with this poor kid who gutted it out and made some plays? Well, he didn't take care of the football. What are you watching, dude? How? And what the worst part is, too, he ain't going anywhere. Raiders are cash poor. They're not firing this guy. They just got to watch him stink and just rot from within while the Chiefs stay good and the Chargers figure things out with Justin Herbert. And the freaking Broncos, if they could get the defense figured out, because Russell Wilson's actually playing pretty well, they just got to sit there and watch Josh McDaniels just rot this team from the inside out, continuing his trend of being terrible when not with Tom Brady. Remember he went to the Rams for like a year or so to be the offensive coordinator there, and he was terrible, and he had to come sniveling back to Bill Belichick, who's the only reason these guys got a job in this league. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm getting like Josh McDaniels did something to me, but it just amazes me how this league refuses to learn from its own mistakes, and it refuses to see, after Josh McDaniels was everything you do not want in a head coach. I get that there's more experience, but with him, and I mean, these are the Raiders. This isn't how the Raiders operate. Josh McDaniels, this little guy, he needs to take care of the football. Like, this is supposed to be the badass team. There's a critical lack of badass on these Raiders.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't know how, as a head coach, you throw your rookie quarterback under the bus after his first career start.
Freaking start. And he almost won the game. They were in it late.
Yes, exactly. And this comes a week after McDaniels, what did he kick a field goal down 2 scores late in the fourth quarter, and he never got the ball back?
Because we needed 2 scores. Like, he didn't even got how math worked. He got, like, addition wrong.
Yeah, so, his coaching, his game management is all over the place. His team plays a sloppy brand of football. Granted, it was a rookie quarterback, but nobody's waxing poetic about how the Raiders perform every Sunday. Yeah, I'm not sure how McDaniels keeps getting a second chance. I mean, he left the Colts at the altar after they hired him as head coach. What was that? Like, I forget what year that was, but
that was before Reich. It had to be 2018. And then he actually he inflicted another evil upon us, because the guy he brought to be defensive coordinator was Matt Eberflus, because he was the linebacker coach for the Cowboys, and then Frank Reich kept him. So indirectly, he's responsible for probably the 2 most disgusting teams in the league right now this year, with the Bears and the Raiders.
That's very true. And I remember the Cowboys organization was upset about losing Eberflus to a defensive coordinator role. They probably didn't envision him becoming a head coach afterward, though.
Is this might be Adam Gase level, where like he may not get a job. No one's even sniffing Gase as even like an offensive assistant. I mean, who's gonna, even if it's just coaching the linebackers? I mean, things are grim. And with McDaniels too, you're gonna hire him to coach quarterbacks? It's not working well.
No, definitely not.
Going to the big game in the 4:00 window, which I'm sure Jerry was very invested in, the Cowboys beating the spirit out of the Patriots for Bill Belichick's biggest loss ever. I mean, Zach Wilson did better than this. Unironically, he did. What are your thoughts on the scintillating offensive performance that Mac Jones put on against the Cowboys?
My thoughts were that it was a tough watch, even as a Cowboys fan. I think the Cowboys were 6-point home favorites, and I mean they won by 35 points, so that pretty much tells the whole story. But Mac Jones was brutal. Greg Olsen mentioned throughout the broadcast that he was late on his reads. He was pointing out open receivers. Mac Jones would throw as the Cowboys defenders were closing in on the ball. He had two awful throws to the flat that Daron Bland jumped for a pick six and then an interception in the third quarter. Mac Jones he was replaced by Bailey Zappi. I know the Patriots are committed to Mac Jones. At least that's what Ian Rappaport reported today. We'll see how long that lasts. But I feel like folks up in Boston are questioning whether they have another quarterback controversy on their hands after drafting Mac Jones just a couple of years ago.
And I feel bad for Mac. I felt bad for him last year because, I mean, I remember watching the Cam Newton year too. I'm like, this is like the worst supporting cast I've ever seen for an NFL quarterback. I mean, Damiere Byrd was the #1 receiver. And then it got slightly better Mac's first 2 years, and he was playing pretty well as a rookie. And then he gets offensive coordinator Matt Patricia and offensive coordinator Joe Judge kind of messed him up a little bit. But again, I felt bad for him because he didn't have receivers either. He had Hunter Henry, but Hunter Henry's not going to transform things. And then this year they come in, they sign Juju, they get Bill O'Brien. I'm like, all right. And they extend Devontae Parker. I'm like, all right, like it's not a good offense, I would think, but it's tolerable. And it's at the level where I can't hear he doesn't have any help at this point. I think that's where it's progressed to. And now his play has gone, like now I'm more critical of Mac, especially because the entire reason I think he got picked where he did, even though there's been a bunch of busts in that draft, Fields and Wilson, but with Fields and Wilson and Lance, it was always they can make spectacular plays, especially out of structure. With Mac, it was he's going to stick in the pocket and accurately get the ball out there. And rookie year, he did that. This year, especially with a lot more playing from behind, I know part of it is he wants to make a play, but like that pick 6 he had to Bland, I mean, that was the worst play I think he's had in his career. It was so late.
So late, so telegraphed.
You could just see, like, I obviously couldn't hear Olsen, but you could just see him. He's like, no. Like, even I think Mac is. You ever like take a shot in basketball and immediately you're like, came off your hand wrong. You're like, up, air ball.
Oh yeah, and you wipe your hands on the shorts.
oh yeah, totally. You're like, blow off in your hands. Like the second Mac let that ball go, he had to be pick.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, Bland went untouched.
This has been the week to go after Bill Belichick too, because I really don't want to get into Belichick and Brady. And I'd rather like get run over with a steamroller than do Belichick Brady debates ever again. But it is tough too because again, no coach has really ever won anything without a great quarterback. But now there's a history of Belichick without Brady. At the very least, he can't get quarterbacks right because I mean, defensively, the defense. I know they got the roof caved in against the Cowboys, but before that, thought they were playing pretty well. He usually drafts well on defense. Christian Gonzalez, who just got hurt, sadly, but he looks like a stud when he's healthy. Like and that scheme is really good. Like there's stuff there he just can't figure out. Like I get it. He had this ideal of Tom Brady. He's like, I want my next Tom Brady. Well, Mac Jones is not Tom Brady, and the sooner they come to that realization, I think the better for New England. So we're gonna do some rapid fire takes here really quick before we get to our big preview show for Seattle and the New York Giants. We're going to start with what was actually, I think, probably the game of record before the Jets game, the Jets-Chiefs game, which was Miami and Buffalo putting up 48 points on the Miami Dolphins. And I actually last week, I'm saying, you know what, the defense, it's not great, but you know what, it could work. It's fine for the Dolphins. Just hold on a little bit. Jalen Ramsey will come back, and you guys will be smooth sailing. Then you give up 48 points to a team that I know Buffalo has been dominating, not against the Jets. Like they beat up on Washington, who I think has an okay defense, but they're exploitable. Josh Allen's exploitable. You just got to get him to be greedy. And they didn't do any of that, and they just let him completely bully Miami. They look soft, which is weird. I know that's old school and kind of like a hokey take, like a finesse team versus a physical team, but I mean, Miami did look like the speedy South Beach guys, and then Buffalo looked like the big, angry, upstate New York guys in that game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, yes, speaking of soft, I think like they had no answer for Josh Allen. I think Allen had counted for more touchdowns than incompletions in the game. I think 5 touchdowns and 4 incompletions, something like that. Don't quote me on it. But, yeah, you have to start asking questions about Vic Fangio. He has the personnel. I know they're without Jalen Ramsey, but they were involved in a shootout with the Chargers like two weeks ago, I think. They're not generating much pressure, and their secondary is getting cooked. I feel bad for the young cornerback who was picked on by Stephon Diggs yesterday, but
I believe he's a South Jersey guy too, so it's hard to rip on my South Jersey guys, but I mean that was tough. That was tough. I got to start the next segment with an apology because I was watching the London game, and I would apologize because I had Desmond Ridder ranked as the #1 quarterback in the 2022 draft class, and it became obvious. I mean, again, he's a very good, I think, NFL backup. I like his mobility. I think when they actually let him turn it loose, I've seen a lot of good throws out of him. But this Falcons team, I think, is very good. I think the defense is 20 times better than it was last year, even though they were playing the Jaguars offense, which I love Trevor Lawrence, but I have my issues with some of the play design and Press Taylor coming in for Doug Peterson. I think it's very vanilla, and they kind of know what's going on, but still held them to a reasonable 23 points. This team is good. Bijan looks amazing, and they're just so limited because Bijan Robinson's getting stacked boxes so many times because nobody trusts Desmond Ridder to beat him with his arm. And for all the talk about the Jets, Jets got to trade for Kirk Cousins or something like that, the Falcons might. Or at least just look at Taylor Heineke. Maybe give Ridder one more game and then press the Heineke button, because I think this team in a weak division could maybe sneak into the playoffs with 9 or 10 wins. And I don't want them to blow it trying to make a third-round pick in Desmond Ridder look like a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very quietly, third-round picks not really panned out as quarterbacks dating back for a couple of at least 10 years. But
I mean, I guess if you like a guy, you pick him earlier than that, if you really like a guy. So
yeah, definitely. But yeah, Desmond Ridder, the Falcons offense is just hard to watch. They have abundance of talent. Like Drake London, I think, has a Pro Bowl ceiling, but you wouldn't know it. He gets like 2 of 5 targets he catches. Granted, one for a touchdown, but yeah, the Bijan facing stack boxes. Desmond Ridder, he just doesn't look confident in the face of pressure, and he can't push the ball downfield. I think we saw Matt Collins explode on him on the sideline after he tried to dap him up. So I don't know what's going on there. I would imagine he'll get one more start before Arthur Smith starts giving Heineke more consideration.
I mean, I poor Kyle Pitts, too. I almost think it's a bit now because Jonnu Smith had like a bunch of yards. I think it's almost like a bit, like he's trying to, like Arthur Smith just doesn't like Kyle Pitts. He had 1,000 yards his rookie year. Throw this guy the ball. Totally not fantasy related, that post. Him and Goddard are both killing me this year. But anyway, the guy who's been killing a lot of fantasy owners this year in a very concerning way is freaking Joe Burrow. And I get that there's which number one, I know he has a calf injury, but I've seen a lot of quarterbacks get hurt and play hurt and get slandered for it. Lamar Jackson last couple of years with the Ravens, like, I get there's a calf injury. I get the offensive line is terrible. I get the Zach Taylor. I get that Joe Mixon's kind of washed and they really don't have that great a running game, but that's all reasons to explain a slight drop in performance. What is not a slight drop in performance is Joe Burrow averaging 4.8 yards per attempt with a passer rating of 69.1 and the 29th best QBR in the league. That's not a slight drop in performance. That is, this guy is almost like broken fundamentally. It's tough to watch sometimes.
Yeah, it is tough. He clearly can't plant off his back foot and push the ball downfield. There's a picture of the Titans' red zone defense where they had no linebackers in the second level. Like, Joe Burrow could have snapped the ball and took off and ran for a touchdown if he wanted to and went untouched from like 12 yards out. But the Titans obviously just he can't move, and it's hindering the Bengals' offense. And they're 1-3 now, and you don't get any bonus points for playing injured. Like, that doesn't save you from criticism. You're judged on your performance, and Burrow is currently a shell of the quarterback who led the Bengals to the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Well, I mean, did you see Jamar Chase in the after it too? I'm always effing open. I'm
well, yeah.
Trouble in paradise. I don't know.
A little bit,
kind of scary. A little bit. I mean, those guys are best buds.
Yeah, that's what makes it so alarming for sure.
So now we got 2 more to worry about. Number 1, another NFC South duel. The Baker Mayfield resurgence is real. I've been very open in the past about my Baker Mayfield love, but I'm looking at this Saints offense, and again, it's tough as a guy who supported Derek Carr, I think, more than a lot of other people have supported Derek Carr, because I think he's got so many raw deals. And now, again, he's playing hurt. He's got like a separated shoulder. He's got a big, giant brace on. And I'm looking at this offense. They've scored 16, 20, 17, and 9 points, which is right near the bottom of the league. With Derek Carr, with Michael Thomas, with now Alvin Kamara back, with Chris Olave, this is not what the Saints should be doing. And I know Pete Carmichael has been the offensive coordinator since 2006, I believe, but that was with Sean Payton. Sean Payton was calling the plays. I'm really wondering if they need a new coordinator, because this guy just looks like How much of the playbook is just bubble screens to Alvin Kamara? Didn't he? I believe at one point he had 13 catches for like 33 yards. I haven't seen that in my entire life.
Yeah, I think he finished with 13 catches for 33 yards, which is absurd. And if you look at Carr's passing chart, very few of his attempts went beyond the line of scrimmage, which is very, very concerning when you have a quarterback with his arm talent. But, I mean, I don't know how limited he was by the shoulder injury. Maybe Jameis Winston should have started just for precautionary reasons, give your quarterback an extra week of rest. But, I mean, I respect Carr for pushing through the injury, just like I do with Joe Burrow. But you're judged on your performance. And the Saints right now are wasting what could be a top 5 defense. I think before this game, I think they had a long stretch of games without allowing 20-plus points. And, the Saints offense is just not clicking right now.
You think Tampa could hold on for the South? Do you think Baker just regresses eventually?
I feel like a Baker regress is coming. But, I mean, if the Falcons can get anything out of their offensive talent, I feel like they should be considered the favorites as long as they don't dig themselves too deep of a hole. I think the Buccaneers sit at 3-1 right now, right?
They're 3-1, and then Atlanta, New Orleans 2-2 with a team we'll talk about very soon coming in at a nice and tidy 0-4. So
so I mean, the Buccaneers should probably be considered the favorites just because Baker has looked like the best quarterback in the division, and the defense is outperforming its potential, I think.
So let's talk about that 0-4 team, why don't we? The Carolina Panthers, who again can't even reap the benefits of being this bad because they traded their pick to the Bears to get Bryce Young, and it is not. I mean, Bryce Young will be fine, but he hasn't played like a number 1 overall pick so far. And one of two things needs to happen: either Frank Reich needs to get the hell out of the offensive play calling thing, or Bryce Young's really got to man up. Those are one of the two. It's got to be one of those two for why the offense stinks. And I'm leaning more towards Reich because I remember when Andy Dalton came in, Andy Dalton had a very expansive playbook. He was chucking it deep a lot, even though they don't have a lot of great receivers. And then I watched this game. He either does he not trust Bryce Young? Is he babying him too much? Do you know how many passes he had completed behind the line of scrimmage out of 24 in the last game?
I'll say half.
Oh, 9. 9 of 24. And they were all like right to the right-hand side of it. All bubble screens. And you can't baby this kid like that. I get if you maybe don't trust a rookie to run a full playbook like that, and I don't want to keep bringing up Zach Wilson as an example, but I think it fits here. The Jets have tried to do that with him, and then the defense just pins their ears back and just comes right after you because there's no threat of him really opening up the defense. And Bryce Young's already kind of starting from an unadvantageous position because of how small he is, historically so. And he's not a Kyler Murray once-in-a-generation top 10 in 2 sports athlete to overcome it. And Kyler was like sturdier too. Like Bryce Young's really kind of lean and ropey. Like I get that there's problems with Bryce Young, but I mean your team's going nowhere. You don't have a first-round pick. Like
that's a thing.
Let Bryce try to cook, man. I don't understand what Frank Reich, a guy who I liked in Indianapolis, I don't know what he's doing here.
Yeah, me too. I think Reich got a raw deal at the end of his Colts tenure. But, he's got to take the training wheels off of Bryce Young. Your team is 0-4. You're not going anywhere. You have to see what you have in your young quarterback. And completing 9 passes behind the line of scrimmage is honestly inexcusable for a number 1 overall pick.
Can't win like that.
No, definitely not. And I know Bryce Young doesn't have a ton of weapons. They traded DJ Moore, but Adam Thielen's a nice security blanket. I mean, Miles Sanders is a decent running back, but you have to see what you have in Bryce Young. And right now, Frank is coaching not to lose as opposed to coaching to win.
Now, what I wonder,
and he's still losing.
Yeah, it's the funny part. What I wonder, I want to get your opinion on this. If it goes calamitously bad, because I don't see a situation, honestly, for a long chunk of the year where Carolina's favorite in a game. If it's really bad and they traded away either Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., the pick that would become one of them. So it would have essentially, because they also had a pick that could have been Jalen Carter. So they would have traded away essentially Jalen Carter, Caleb Williams, and DJ Moore for Bryce Young. There's a universe where that happens. Is there a chance that they just clean house and get Scott Fitterer out and get Frank Reich out? Frank Reich's old. I think he's like 62 or something like that. I mean, he's not going to coach forever. Is there a chance they just go, all right, didn't work, new guy? I think there might be.
Yeah, I mean, you have to consider all possibilities, especially, I mean, depending on how high of a pick you have, like I would hate that for Wright because there was so much hype around him coming in to coach Bryce Young, but I mean, the NFL waits for no team, coach, or quarterback. So if they win 1 or 2 games, I don't know how you don't consider that a possibility, even 3 games.
And with that is the end of the rapid fire take. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And now we get to our big Monday night preview. 2 teams in opposite directions, the Seattle Seahawks and the New York Giants, the latter of whom I think we both have seen up close enough, and we both know there are some big questions around them. But let's start with Seattle first, because I feel like this was another team. Everybody was kind of operating with them in the preseason like how they're operating with Tampa Bay now, where it's like, oh, it's great that Geno Smith, in this case, instead of Baker Mayfield, had a resurgence, great story, comeback player of the year, whatever. But then things will get real and they'll slow down. And they haven't. They really haven't. Seattle just picked up a tough road win in Detroit. I know the Rams beat him. Geno has a weird thing with the Rams. He always struggles against the Rams, even though they didn't really have a great defense this year. But I'm looking at Seattle, and I'm looking at how wide open the NFC is, because really I think San Francisco's in a tier all their own. Then there's Philly, Dallas, and then there's who the hell knows. I mean, there's a legitimate case. If Geno keeps playing like this, if they get the running game that they normally have with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, why can't they be the 4th best team in the NFC?
I don't see a reason why they can't be, especially with all the talent they have on offense at receiver. And what's crazy is like Jackson Smith and Jigba hasn't really gotten involved much at all. I know he was coming back from a broken wrist suffered in the preseason, but you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, who's just perennially underrated, and Jackson Smith and Jigba to go with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I don't see – I totally agree. The Seahawks could very well be the 4th best team in the NFC behind the 49ers, Eagles, and Cowboys.
And now when I'm looking at Seattle against the Giants specifically, if the offensive line, it seems like is always a problem in Seattle, but if it holds up, because, I mean, Dexter Lawrence is still good, and I think Kayvon Thibodeau's too – how do I say this? He's too good to be this bad. So eventually I think he's going to get home. Maybe it's tonight. If they hold up, I think this could be a real nightmare for the Giants defense, because this is a Shane Waldron who's a McVay guy, so it's really tough to just blitz the hell out of these guys. And they got some rookie. Deonte Banks looks good, but he's a rookie. Trey Hawkins is a rookie. That secondary, I think, is well below league average. And then you get Lockett and DK Metcalf, the transformer, the Adonis figure that he is, running open down the field. And Geno Smith, who I think is still probably top 5 in the league in terms of deep ball throwing and deep ball accuracy. Even with the Jets, he always had a good deep ball. But again, they babied him a lot. A lot of short stuff wasn't really his game. If he lets it fly, this might be over quick. I mean, this is just a tough. I don't think Seattle's that much radically better, like 1-53, but it's just a tough strength on weakness matchup here.
Yeah, it really is. And we saw last week in the Giants' loss against the 49ers that their secondary can't tackle. Even their second-level defenders couldn't tackle. Deebo Samuel was shrugging defenders off for 20-yard gains. George Kittle was doing George Kittle things. McCaffrey. I just worry about the Giants secondary, like you said. Xavier McKinney, standout safety for the last couple of years, hasn't really performed up to expectations. Adoree Jackson is usually solid, but when you have 2 rookies starting and veteran playmakers like Seattle does, it's usually not a recipe for success.
I'm looking at the Giants too, and this was a guy. I know that everybody falls into the trap of trying to confirm your pre-draft priors if you're in the NFL draft. I get why. You want to look like you're smart. You want to look like you had the idea before everybody else. So when Daniel Jones comes out, his rookie year, he was actually pretty good because he didn't have a lot around him. I think he threw like 24 touchdowns. Like he had the fumbling issue, but I'm like, all right, that's pretty good. Then I'm going to go look at Daniel Jones, his last 3 seasons, which the Giants apparently thought was worthy of a 3-year contract that pays him $40 million a year. I'm not saying quarterbacks don't matter. I feel like every big quarterback extension lately, outside of like Mahomes, has been bad. Carr and Burrow and all that. But Daniel Jones in his last, let's say 3 seasons and 3 games. So that's 44 starts. He has 38 touchdowns, 26 picks, and they're 19, 24, and 1. Does that sound like $40 million to you? Now, again, he's a great runner, but I don't think he's like a Fields runner or a Lamar runner where it just takes over a game purely based on his legs. I think he runs a lot and he's good at it, but I'm looking at this production. I mean, if I just saw those numbers with a guy, I know that Mike Kafka's not, Andy Reid, but it's an Andy Reid disciple who's a big passing game guy. I know he's never had receivers. I almost kind of excused some of the Joe Judge stuff because he was working with really not a lot there, but you can't keep playing like this, man. I got to see $40 million. I'm seeing like $14 million. Where's the 40?
That's what everyone's looking for pretty much. And I know he's not in a great situation, but I mean, they added a lot of talent. They traded for Darren Waller, and we haven't really seen him pop yet. I wonder if they make it a point of emphasis to get him involved tonight. But yeah, he has more than enough talent. It hurts that Saquon Barkley won't play, and I think Andrew Thomas is out too, which puts a bigger spotlight on Evan Neal, who's had a less than stellar start to his career as a former, I think, number 7 overall pick.
You're in a forgiving mood with less than ideal. I mean, that dude looks like they just pulled a guy out of like selling hot dogs. They're like, hey, we missed a guy. We missed a guy. Come on down here. What? Number 73. I mean, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I wonder if he might be better served as a guard. Maybe he might not have the strength or the speed to contend with.
Might be better served in the XFL at this rate. I don't know if guard will help him out. It's very, very Eric Flowers I'm getting with this. Although Evan Neal was like a 5-star recruit. I don't know what the hell happened to Evan Neal.
Yeah, I don't know. He was a high recruit coming out of Alabama.
It's just tough to see. And then you bring up the Seattle defense, which is getting Jamal Adams back. I know that Jets fans hate Jamal Adams. I've never hated Jamal Adams for the trade thing. I know he was pissed at the Jets, but this guy had the audacity, Jerry, to not want to play for Adam Gase and to go to a team that was going to give him the exact contract anyway. And then with the pick you got Vera Tucker and Garrett Wilson. What are you complaining about, Jets fans? You got Garrett Wilson and Vera Tucker with those picks, so stop complaining. But anyway, he's back. Even if he's not, Ed Reed as the cover guy, he makes an impact in the box, big hitter, gets a lot of sacks. That I think he could heat up Daniel Jones, who again has to go up against Devin Witherspoon, number 5 overall pick, who's played like a number 5 overall pick, I think, in limited action.
Yep.
In a defense that for years Pete Carroll was very stubborn, and he did not want to change it. Finally, he makes some coordinator changes, and we're seeing not Legion of Boom level, but it's certainly respectable, and respectable enough to give Daniel Jones as much of a headache as, number 1, the Cowboys and Niners, who beat the ever-living crap out of Daniel Jones, and a Cardinals team that if they had Kyler Murray would have beaten Daniel Jones. So he's not exactly coming in with a ton of momentum.
No, definitely not. And I wonder if Brian Dable and Mike Kafka will cater to that with their game plan at all. I'm interested to see how the opening drive looks like, and the Giants' overall approach to combat the changes Pete Carroll has made to the defense, like you were saying. But yeah, we definitely need to see an improvement from Daniel Jones. I mean, he kept the Giants. I think it was more so the defense, but the Giants were within striking distance in the third quarter against the 49ers last week. They definitely played with more energy following after the first, what was it, 6 quarters? I think they were outscored I don't even know the numbers,
like 61-0 or something. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But we definitely need to see some improvement from Daniel Jones tonight. I know the Seattle defense has improved, but it's nothing. I don't think it can hold a candle to the Cowboys and 49ers.
Now let's get into some predictions as we close out the show. Let's get a prediction. I believe going back to the last couple of days, I am, because the Saints won, and then I believe I'm like 3-1. I believe I had the Rams pulling off an upset against the Bengals, and then that didn't happen. But if I'm looking at this game, I know this is a must-win for the Giants. West Coast team coming to New York, big game, prime time on the road. I'm still gonna say Seattle 27, Giants 20. I think Daniel Jones will get a couple big plays. I think that even without Saquon Barkley, I think Matt Breida is a fine backup running back. You need him for a game or two. I think he could break a run. He's still really fast. I just have a tough time if it gets into like a shootout, seeing Jones in his current state with 2 touchdowns all season, looking to Geno Smith right now and going shot for shot. Isn't that a crazy statement in the year 2023? Like, will he be able to keep up with Geno Smith throwing the ball? But that's where we're at. So, Jerry, you in line with that prediction, or are you bucking the trend and going Giants?
No, I think I'm in line with that prediction. I don't trust the Giants yet. They haven't really put together a complete performance. So I'm going to go with a 30-23 Seahawks win on Monday Night Football.
Geez, you're really even more pessimistic about Wink Martindale than I am, who I don't even think he really has a defensive place yet. I think he's just like, go get it, mother effers. I really think he's just that level of, we're going to blitz every play.
That's what they did last week against Brock Purdy, and it did not work at all.
It didn't work. He was like 14 of 16 against the blitz or something like that. So We'll see if Wink Martindale can overcome that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to Stack in the Box. Make sure to follow both me and Jerry on Twitter. Jerry's at JTrotta24, and I'm at @Luciano. Jerry, any final thoughts on the Week 4 action?
I thought it was an entertaining week. I feel like the Bills are probably the biggest winner. They hammered Miami. And as far as biggest losers, got to go with the Bengals probably, right? They're 1-3 after starting the season as favorites to make it to the AFC Championship game.
I mean, they can't do anything right. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. We'll be back at the same time next week. Make sure you also watch the Stacking the Box Tuesday show. We'll be on around noontime Eastern on the Stacking the Box show. So thank you guys so much. That's been Jerry Trotta. I've been Mike Luciano, and we will see you folks next week.